Hi class, it's Miss Alva. Today we're going to learn about multiplying two-digit numbers. Before we get started, I want you to make sure that you have some graph paper to work on. We always try to use graph paper when doing this. It helps us keep our numbers organized. In our classroom, above the mailboxes where we keep our paper, there should be some graph paper for you to use. Now, if there's not, you can use lined paper, but really graph paper is the best for this type of math problem. Go ahead and pause the video if you need to go get some. Okay. Just as with our other math videos, if you already know how to multiply two-digit numbers, I still want you to go through the video, but you can skip ahead, do the problem, and then check your answer with me. If you're not sure how to do two-digit numbers at all, or have no idea, or you feel you need a little more practice, then go ahead and watch the video the whole way through. Okay, let's take a look at our first problem. What do I mean by two-digit numbers? Well, I mean that I am multiplying these numbers together, and each of them has two digits. 1, 2. 1, 2. So really, if I were to rewrite my problem, I would rewrite it like this. 40 times 42. Go ahead and write that on your paper. Excuse me, 40 times 24. I need to make sure I'm accurate. Okay? And you can mark this as problem 1 and put a circle around it so that you're not confusing the 1 as part of your problem. Okay, so when I am working with a two-digit number, I can use several different strategies, but today we're going to start out with the traditional method. Does that name sound familiar? It should, because we already use the traditional method when multiplying by a one-digit number. But now we're going to use a similar method for this type of problem. Remember, it's called traditional method because it is the method that is most commonly used by everybody. It starts off just like the other traditional method. I ignore this number here. In fact, I could cover it up and ignore it for now. And just pretend this is a regular multiplication problem with one digit. And you know how to solve these, right? You should. The first thing I do is I look at 4 times 0. And I know that 4 times 0 is 0. What am I going to look at next? 4 times 4. And 4 times 4 is 16. Pretty familiar, right? Now, here's where it gets a little different. Once I'm done using this digit 4 and multiplying it by 0 and by 4, I'm now going to ignore it and look at this digit. I also need to multiply the 2. And I start off just like I did before with the number on the right. So I think to myself, 2 times 0. Now be careful. The 2 is in what place value? The 2 is in the tens place. So this doesn't actually say 2 times 0. It says 20 times 0 because the value of the 2 is 20. So because we have that extra 0, when I find my answer, I can't put it in the ones place here. I need to put it in the tens place because the 2 is in the tens place. So in order to make sure I put it in the correct spot, before I start multiplying, I put what I like to call my placeholder. Now I put an X, but really what this should be is a 0. That extra 0 that's hiding behind this box. This is the 2, is the value is 20. We have that extra 0. That extra 0 should go here. But I like to use an X because it reminds me, hey, you put a placeholder there. Okay, so I'm going to repeat myself one more time. This is very important when multiplying with 2-digit numbers. Once you start with the other digit, with the second digit that's in the tens place, you put your answer in the tens place, down here, not in the ones place here. So you put your placeholder X to remind yourself, don't put your answer here, put it here. We'll have some more practice with this as we go along. So just like before, what is 2 times 0? 0. Put your answer here because the 2 is in the tens place. And then finally, what is 2 times 4? 8. Okay. Now what this is saying is 160 and 80, this is actually saying 800 because remember that X is like a 0, so this is 800. What do you think I'm going to do with these two numbers? Add them together. 0 plus 0 is 0, 6 plus 0 is 6, and 8 plus 1 is 8. Our answer is 860. Okay, let's take a look at the second one. This time, I'm going to have you work on your paper, and as you work, I'll kind of give you clues and hints on what the steps are. Alrighty, step 1 is copy the problem down, so go ahead and do that. Oh, before we go any further, you will be turning this work in so that when I come back, I can see that you did some work during math. So right now, every single one of you, go ahead and put your name and your number at the top of the paper. Even if you're not done watching the video, I expect you to turn it in to the green dot. That way when I come after school, I can see your work, okay? But if you put your name on it, you'll get credit. If not, you will not. So do that right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. Remember, step 1 is ignore that extra number. Okay, you ignore it. I will put a little box on top of it so that I can ignore it. You can put your finger on top of it, or you can just ignore it, whatever works better for you. And we look at this as if it were a regular multiplication problem with just one digit on the bottom. Can you go ahead and find the answer to this multiplication problem? Go ahead and pause the tape now. Okay, so let's see. We start on the right if we're using the traditional method. So 0 times, oh, let me get my highlighter. Now, I don't recommend that you use a highlighter on your paper because you will not be able to erase it and it will get messy. But I use a highlighter so that you can see during my lessons what I'm doing. So 0 times 1 is 0. And 0 times 1, because we go in order, right, is 0. So did you get 0 for that part? Hopefully you did. Now we're going to do the second part. We're going to ignore the one we already did and move on to this number here. Okay, and we always start on the right for traditional method, so I will do 6 times 1. Now before we start, what is that thing I told you you have to put here? Do you remember? Go ahead and put it on your paper if you remember. You should put an X here. Do you remember why? The reason why is because the 6 is in the tens place. And so we do not put our answer in the ones place here. This is our placeholder to remind us, don't put your answer here. Instead, you're going to put your answer underneath the 6 because the value of the 6 is 60. It should go in the tens place. Okay, so what is 6 times 1? Write your answer down here. Six. And finally, oops, don't want to turn that. What is 6 times 1? Where will your answer go? Here. And what do we do with these two? Add them together. Go ahead and add them. Remember, the x is like a 0. Your answer should be 660. Okay? All right, 20 times 20. Before we get started with the traditional method, I do want to mention that I could use mental math to find the answer to this problem, just like we did with one digit. It's the same rule. First, I look at my facts. How much is 2 times 2? 4. And how many zeros am I going to add? 1, 2. So our answer should be 400 once we're done. Remember, the mental math only works when you have zeros. Let's look back at this problem. Could I answer this one using mental math? Absolutely. What is 6 times 11? 66. And how many zeros am I going to add? 1 0. And look, 660, which matches our answer. So you could do mental math if you use some zeros. Go ahead and write the problem down. If you're feeling that you are able to solve this problem on your own, you can pause the video now and then come back and check your answer. If you still need a little bit of guidance, go ahead and work on this with me. First of all, we ignore the second digit. Go ahead and multiply this. I'm not going to use the highlighter right now, but see if you can tell me what would be the answer, what would I put in this first row for my answer. Pause the video now. Welcome back. You should have looked at this and said, starting on the right for traditional method, 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. Should have 0 on the first line. Is that what you have? I hope you do. Next, we're done with the 0, going to the 2. Tell me what you would put first before you start. Go ahead and do that now. I'll wait for you. Because the 2 is in the tens place, we need to put our answer in the tens place. So we put our placeholder to remind ourselves, do not put your answer there. That's in the ones place. Go ahead and solve this, and you can come back and check your answer. Put pause now. Welcome back. I know that 2 times 0 is 0, and 2 times 2 is 2. Oh, 4. Careful. Make sure you're accurate, right? Then I'm going to add that together. Our answer should be 400. Look how neat and organized I'm keeping this. It is so important to go slow, take your time, and do not make small errors. Attention to detail, precision. Make sure you are very carefully organizing this so that you're not making silly mistakes. All right, I actually would like to do a different problem from this so that you can have some practice with carrying over. So we're going to pretend that this problem is 25 times 46. Go ahead and write that down. In this problem, you'll see we'll have some numbers to carry over, and it's not going to affect our answer at all or our work at all. We're still following the same rules as we did before with traditional method, except this time we're dealing with the 2 digits. So if you know how to do this, of course, you can go ahead and solve and then check your answer with me. If you make a mistake, you need to go back and rewatch this section of the video so that you know what your mistake was. If you're not sure what to do, that's okay. Let's solve it together. First, we ignore the extra digit. Now, go ahead and solve this just like you would a regular problem. You're going to be carrying over some numbers, so the only thing I would give you as a tip is make sure that when you carry over the number, you put it on top, right on top there. Okay? Go ahead and solve this now and then come back and check your answer. Press pause. Welcome back. The first thing you should have done was 6 times 5, and I know that 6 times 5 is 30. Okay, and just like we did before with traditional method, we would put the 0 here. Oh, and let me actually change color. So 6 times 5 is 30, so I hope you put the 0 here, and then the 3 goes on top there. Okay? Then we need to do 6 times 2, which is 12, and plus 3, don't forget to add that. So 6 times 2 is 12, plus 3 more is 15. So your paper should look like this, hopefully. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm finished with the 6, go to the 4, and do the same thing. Before I start, I need to do 2 things. Do you remember what the first thing is? It has to do with this box here. Placeholder, to remind myself not to put my answer in the ones place, but to put it in the tens place because that's where the 4 is. Okay, there's something else that you need to do that is very important. You need to erase this number up here. Some of you cross it out. Some of you put an extra. I know sometimes parents tell you to put an extra number on top. I like to erase it and tell my students to erase it because then there's no confusion. The reason we erase it is because we're done with it. This 3 was from the problem that we did before. This 3 was from doing 6 times 5 is 30, okay? And we're done with that. We're done with this line. We are done with the 6. We don't need it anymore. So I'm going to very much encourage you to go back and erase that. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to get confused with the next line, and you're going to think that you need to add the 3, which you don't. Okay, so erase that 3. We are done with that 3. Okay. So let's take a look. The first thing I'm going to do is, oops, do you know? 4 times 5, which is 20. And remember, we don't put our answer right underneath here. We need to put it here. So 20. And carry over the 2. Do you see why it's important to erase the 3? The 3 would have been in the way. So we want to make sure to get rid of that. Okay? And next we're going to do, what do you think? 4 times 2, which is 8, plus 2 more, so that would be 8, 9, 10. I ran out of room, but I'll put my 10 here. And what is the last step? The last step is to add. 0 plus 0 is 0. 5 plus 0 is 5. 1 plus 0 is 1. And 1,150. Can I use the mental method to solve this or check my answer? No, I can't because there are no zeros here, so it's really difficult for me to do that. Okay, hopefully this was your answer. I'm going to go ahead and skip this part. Oh no, actually, you know what? We can look at this because it's all mental math. It'll be quick. I don't even need to write this on graph paper. I can do this in my head. So for numbers 19A to 19E, select yes or no to tell whether the answer is correct. All right, 28 times 10. Is that 280? Well, 28 times 1 is 28. And how many zeros should I add? 1 0. It's correct. By the way, make sure you are filling in the bubbles. You should never make an X or a check mark. You should always carefully fill in the bubbles. It's harder for me because I'm on the computer, but you should always do that. Okay, next problem. Is 15 times 20 300? Well, 15 times 2, hopefully you know that's 30. If not, you might need to do a little bit of multiplication on the side. So 15 times 2 is 30. And how many zeros will I add? 1 0. So yes. Go ahead and solve number 19C, 19D, and 19E on your own. Make sure you write your answers on your paper. Go ahead and pause now. Okay, welcome back. 17 times 1 is 17. What did they forget to do? You're supposed to add a 0. They're missing a 0. This should be 170. So the answer is no. Okay? 8 times 1 is 8. Add 2 zeros, 1, 2, which they did. So yes, that's the correct answer. My bubbling in is very sloppy, but like I said, I'm on a computer, so it's harder. I expect yours to be much neater. And I know 16 times 3 is, I'm not sure. Let's see. 16 times 3. 3 times 6 is 18. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 more is 4. So 16 times 3 is 48. Uh-oh. That's wrong. No. Okay. Also, did they add the correct number of zeros? They were supposed to add 1 0, but they added 2. So that's absolutely incorrect. Okay. Okay, let's move on. A word problem. Fantastic. Malala has 20 vases. She puts 12 flowers into each vase. How many flowers does she use? I'm going to go back to grab some graph paper. Okay. Think about her. Think about her, Malala. Think about her vases. She has 20 of them. Okay, so I could draw a picture, help me with the problem, and draw 20 boxes. Now don't draw it on your paper because on your paper it would take forever to draw 20, but you can watch me because I'm going to use my computer to do it quickly. Okay, so here's 5. So I'm going to do 10, 15, 20. Okay, so she has 20 vases, and she put 12 flowers into each vase. So I would put 12 into each. Now, if you were struggling with this problem and you didn't know what to do, even though it might take a little bit to make their 20 vases, I definitely would draw a picture. Now, if it said 100 vases, then drawing a picture wouldn't really help. Okay, so I'm not going to put 12 in all of them, but we can get the idea. There should be a 12 in each of the vases. So I'm going to say this is the same thing as repeated addition, or the same thing as 20. Oh, I would like to use black. 20 times 12. Go ahead and solve this problem on your own, and then press play to see if you got the correct answer. Welcome back. I'm not going to use a highlighter this time. We need to get comfortable with looking at the numbers without highlighting. And I will not cover the 1, but in my imagination, I am covering the 1 and ignoring it. I start with the number 2, and I think 2 times 0 is 0, and 2 times 2 is 4. The first line of your answer should say 40. If it does, good job. If it doesn't, you need to fix it. I'm done with the 2 now because I've multiplied it by the 0 and I've multiplied it by the 2. So I'm going to ignore this one now and go on to the 1. Hopefully you remembered that because the 1 is in the tens place, I need to put a place value holder here to remind myself not to put my answer there. Okay, and I should say 1 times 0 is 0, and 1 times 2 is 2. The second line of your problem should look like this, 20, and then your placeholder. Then you should have added the 2 together. Your final answer should be 240. And we're talking about flowers. So it should say 240 flowers. Hopefully you got that correct. Let's move on. A factory makes 80 bicycles a day. How many bicycles do they make in 22 days? So I'm not going to draw my 80 bicycles or my 22 days, but in my head I can kind of imagine that I have groups of days, and in each day I would make 80 bicycles. So I know that that's multiplication. Go ahead and solve the problem and then come back and check your answer. Pause the video now if you haven't already. Okay, welcome back. The first thing you should have done was 2 times 0, which is 0. Then 2 times 8, which is 16. The first line of your problem should say 160. We're going to ignore this one now and move on to the left. You're going to do 2 times 0, then 2 times 8. But before I do that, I put my placeholder to remind myself not to put my answer here because the 2 is in the tens place, so we need to put our answer underneath. 2 times 0 is 0, and 2 times 8 is 16. My final step is going to be to add these two together. 0, 6, 7, 1. Don't forget your comma, and it should say bicycles. 1,760 bicycles. For this one, could I have done mental math? Yes, I could. 2 times 12 is 24, and add a 0, which is 240, which matches our answer. For this one, I can't do mental math because I don't know what 8 times 22 is. All right, boys and girls, hopefully this was some good practice for you. For homework today, you will be receiving a paper where you need to do some of this multiplication. Okay? I definitely recommend coming back to this video at home if you have the internet and a computer or an iPad and practicing a couple of problems with me, especially if you're having problems with the homework or you just need to refresh your memory on how to do this. All right, don't forget to turn this into the green dot and to put your name on it. That way you'll get credit for your hard work. I'll see you later.